Hey, this is Chris McNamara with Outdoor Gear Lab. Today we're checking out what to consider when buying a camping tent. The most important thing is comfort. These tents, you're generally not having to hike far, so weight's not an issue. So you want the tent to be really comfortable. You want it to be your base camp for all the adventures you're doing. And what most affects comfort is the ceiling height. You want to be able to walk into a tent and stand up and move around even when the bad weather comes in. You don't want to be always crouching or only able to stand in the center. It's also really nice when there's versatility, such as having mesh on one side and not mesh on the other. It lets you have a very well ventilated tent. It means that at night you can look at the stars or not look at the stars, depending on what you choose. Another thing to look for is workmanship. Some of these tents are going to be a lot more durable than others, like our Kodiak Flexbow. It uses this super burly canvas. It uses really heavy and thick poles, which means you can really thrash it and it's going to hold up a lot longer. Tents like the Kingdom 8 here, it's our favorite tent, but you do have to be more careful. We were able to bend a pole when we didn't stake it down right. So something to consider, not just the price, but how many uses you're going to get out of it. Now, another big factor is the ease of setup. Most of these tents, once you get them dialed, you can set them all up in 10 or 15 minutes, but that first time you set it up, and let's be honest, most people, every time you go camping, it's usually, once, twice a year, so every time is sort of the first time when you're setting these things up. Some of the tents, they're confusing. You really have to read the manual, which of course no one really wants to, or no one ever does. Then there will be a tent like this. This is the Coleman Instant 6, and all the poles are on these locking mechanisms, so the whole tent just goes together kind of like a giant spider, and then you just pop them out and the poles have these little click lock mechanisms, so this whole tent sets up in under 2 minutes. This is great because often a tent that sets up in under 2 minutes, you're just going to use a lot more often. Whereas if it's a tent that takes 10 or 15 minutes, you're gonna be like, well, we'll leave it at home. We won't take it to that picnic. We won't do that. You get a lot more versatility out of a tent that packs up. Lastly, very important is the storm resistance. If you want, the tricky thing about storm resistance is often you have to sacrifice tons of storm resistance for comfort. For example, this tent is very comfortable and you get a lot of surface area, but because it's not a dome-shaped tent with crisscrossing poles, it means that when the wind picks up, it really starts to get kind of bowed in, like as you can see here. So if you are going to be camping in windy areas, stormy areas, you want to make sure that you get a tent that has more of a dome shape, more crisscross poles to give you more structure. It just comes down to what you're using it for. A lot of times, if you're honest, you're not going to go camping if there's the chance of seriously bad weather. So what you generally want is a tent that'll just be fine in kind of moderately bad weather, which most of the tents we tested were. So those are just some of the things to consider when buying a camping tent. We have a much more detailed buying advice article online at outdoorgearlab.com. We hope you'll check it out.